Hello, Jerry.
Hi, Galen. How are you today?
I'm wonderful. I think it's great I can talk to you again here.
It's 27th, right? September 27th,
Hmm.
2013. And we're talking to Galen Sharp, part two of our interview. And one thing that we talked about was the Mountain Path magazine that you mentioned. And I see it's still going.
Oh, that's wonderful.
Yeah,
Is it only online, or do they actually still send it out as a?
apparently they still send it out.
Oh,
It's You can access every issue online through 2010.
uh-huh.
Apparently, it's still being published. They have subscription rates, and I guess they mail out probably hard copies, or I don't know if it's online or what. It wasn't quite clear.
Hmm. That's wonderful. I think I'll try to pick it up again and follow through. Although Wei Wu Wei and Um, Paul Reps are not in it anymore. I imagine it's still very interesting.
I was looking at a current one, a one or two from 2010. It's still a lot of the same themes, memories of Ramana, and some more or less scholarly articles about Advaita and some book reviews. But it's a good publication. It's just not. It doesn't have a very high profile, except among people who would be Ramana devotees.
Uh-huh.
But it's something I think I'll mention in my newsletter because it's probably kind of overlooked.
Mm-hmm. That would be very kind of you. Yes. I'm sure they would appreciate it. It would help them.
But yeah, I think it should have a little bit of exposure.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, it certainly wouldn't hurt, and who knows, uh, who may be bettered by it.
Yeah, it's interesting to read about memories of Ramana from people.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Have you ever had? You did some travel. I know that you talked about was in your late teens, early 20s, apparently in Europe. But have you ever been to India, or have you ever had an urge to go?
Oh, no, I really haven't. In fact, I got most of my traveling out of my system, I think, in Europe. It never occurred to me, really. I know most of like Douglas Harding and Terence Gray have, made their way to there at one time or another. And I guess at that time it was really the only place you could hear these people and actually be in touch with them verbally and see them and that sort of thing. But I don't know that nowadays there's so much available in books and online. Uh, but they also seemed to feel that there was some real value of just being in their presence.
Mm.
So that is one aspect of it too that I haven't had the pleasure of. There was the one time I went to see Swami Muktananda, but that was just a brief greeting. So I haven't been to India. That was when he was over here in the Denver area.
Yeah, well, some people still are going to India for what I guess there must be endless reasons why, but one reason, a couple of people that I know that go there, they just enjoy the land. It feels like home, I guess.
Hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I have the back screen on my computer is one of the standard ones I guess you get with your operating system of India and the mountain, not India, of China and the mountains on China, and I've got that up there. I always enjoy it. It's a big river and people working the fields and the big tall, those signature mountains that are just very very tall, but almost like cones sticking up. And, I could appreciate, the just being in the land. I could see that. I could understand that.
Yeah, speaking of Asia, you mentioned when you do sculpture, it's like a Zen activity in the sense that you're very much in the moment, probably time stops. And do you have any affinity for, I'm thinking Japanese um, art or,
Yeah, I do, in the artwork and the crafts, things like that. Yes, I never carried it through feeling that to sort of imitate, uh, the dress and stuff. I know some people like to wear Japanese robes and things when they meditate and stuff like that. I never felt that really uh, made any difference to me, so I really don't have any attachments in those ways.
yeah, I guess not everybody has callings to visit places that they may, have an affinity with.
Yeah. Well,
In spirit somehow. It doesn't necessarily mean you have to go there.
and I feel my book is purely Western oriented, so I kept most of the Eastern expressions out of it. There's some and mention, with the Chen masters and different things like that, but I wanted to keep it something uh, more purely from the West that people like myself here, could understand them and not have to look up a lot of meanings that maybe they weren't familiar with.
Yeah, you don't really need a glossary for Sanskrit terms. I don't know if you use
Hmm.
any of them actually.
Oh, I would doubt it if I did, but I can't say for sure.
Yeah. The other thing I wanted to round out is you mentioned that you're married, but I didn't ask you about kids or children or anything else. Maybe you want to
Oh,
fill in those blanks if you want to.
well, just that I have two grown children, and they both have their own families, and I have one grandchild now who came to visit yesterday morning, and so I mean, excuse me, take that back. I have three grandchildren and one great grandchild.
Oh,
So that's basically the outline of my family.
yeah.
We're very close. We see each other a lot of the time. I don't have any workshops or anything like that going at the time either, and I've not really spoken of these things in public for quite a while. So nothing in terms of that is going on as far as the people coming to the house to talk and that sort of thing.
Yeah. So your kids, your family, or your wife, do they ask you much about your interest in these teachings?
No, they're familiar. They understand. They're very sympathetic. They have a lot of insight themselves, and really are a help to me, especially when I was writing the book to, go through it and proof it and help me with areas that weren't real clear and that sort of thing. My daughter, my wife, especially my wife, she really has a good feel for uh, what is understandable, for what makes sense, that sort of thing. So she's been invaluable in writing the book, and she's also good at catching typos and that sort of thing.
Hmm. Yeah, it's so important to have support of your
Yeah, it
spouse, your
really is.
family.
Yeah, it makes a real difference, I think, to have members of your family also sympathetic to what means so much to me, that it's been part of my life for so many years that I really don't talk about or do teachings about, but we, make a lot of remarks as people would do together who understand each other very well.
We've built a non-duality community here, actually, with meetings. We have meetings. Lately, it's been once a week, but it's a couple times a month at least.
Oh, that's wonderful.
Now, well, you're relevant here, because for our next meeting, which is this Sunday, we are going to be going over your first reality meditation.
Oh, wonderful.
Something I wanted to ask you. What the heck should we do? No, we'll have our own way of presenting it. But
certainly, yeah. Well, just follow directions, Jerry.
Yeah.
And, that's it. It's and remember, they're very simple, especially the first one. They're very simple, and maybe just reading them makes one tend to think, oh, I don't need to do that. But actually doing them brings you to a more non-linear place where you see past that, or can, in the immediate sense. I know Wei Wu Wei called it intuitive research, and I thought that was just a terrific term.
Intuitive research.
Intuitive research, yes. And that's what I call it, of course, also. And they can have, though not necessarily are they guaranteed to have a great impact. Some will have more impact than others, I think, on the people in your group. And it's always interesting when some people, really gain an insight from it, and those who don't know what they're talking about. There could be some interesting times then. But we try to do several different kinds from several different directions that gives everybody a chance to do something that might be more along their lines of understanding. So just have fun with it, In my study plans, I was wrong on our last talk. There are really only 7 lessons. And there I use several other additional intuitive research exercises there, and it should be a lot of fun, because when you're in a group, people can talk it over rather than if you're just reading it alone in a book.
Now,
So,
this is in the workshop material that you wrote. Last time you said there were, I think, 14 lessons.
yes, and I'm really wrong.
Yep.
I combined two chapters with most lessons. So we have a chapter we talk about and do the stuff with it, and then a break, and then get to the next one. It's kind of a rush through, but people during the week have a chance to catch up, reread it or that sort of thing. And if one is just doing them, with the group without my study guide, it's probably best just to take each chapter, although 1 or 2 of them are pretty short. Just take each chapter and kick it around. Some people will understand certain parts and are able to help others, and it really brings people together.
Yeah, these groups are great. We've been meeting for 4 years at least, and
Oh, that's terrific.
people love it. I mean, we all love it.
Yeah, I'll bet.
Now, your reality meditation number 1, the one we're going to be doing, it invites people to write down the responses to various questions. So this is about labeling. Like it's you ask people to make a chart of who you are, and
Oh, yeah, the eye chart.
in the eye chart. So you ask people to put down your name, where I live, where I'm born, my hobbies, my strengths and weaknesses, and several other questions. Just flipping, turning the page. What's my best memory, my worst memory? Various questions that would allow people to find the labels by which we identify ourselves, typically. So that's the first part.
You can go on and on with those, of course. You know, the tendency might to say, well, I'm much more than that. I'm a lot of other things too. But even if you put them all down, you know, you'll find that, well, this really isn't you. These are just a bunch of thoughts.
You can even get into the spiritual level with that. What are my spiritual experiences? What are my spiritual achievements? My greatest insights? So anything that you think.
Yeah, those are good too.
Onto, yeah.
Add those, and sometimes it's good to take one of those whiteboards and put a lot of those on it. That's what we do in the workshops. You know, write those down on a deal, and people can add, just like you did, more things to put down on it, and you can, no matter what happens, you can say, well, is that really what I am? And like Nisargadatta said, nothing perceived can be me or mine. And that is so very powerful if you really look at it. And that's sort of where we're coming from on that.
After a person writes down these questions in response to them in such a way to identify all these labels, and some of them are obvious, like my name and my job, and some are subtle, spiritual knowings. Then you ask, the next part then is to ask, to look at these labels and to ask, is this really me? Which is what you just said. And then you invite the question, is this really me, or is this simply a list of labels, ideas, memories, concepts? And then the question, if I had no labels, would I still exist?
And that's scary for some people. You know, sometimes in the morning you wake up quietly and you have not much thought going on, even about who you are or what you have to do during the day, and it's very quiet and peaceful, and you don't have any of those, you know, stirring up inside you, and that's kind of a wonderful time. But when people are brought to that suddenly, it can be threatening to them. So help those people who flip out and say, "Oh my gosh, I'm left with nothing." So see what you can do about that, Ed.
Well, yeah. Well, and then the next question then is, does this thought upset me? You know, this thought of who I would be without any labels. So I think what we'll do then, like I said, you invite people to write down responses to these questions. And I don't know if we'll have a whiteboard handy or a easel. We should get one for our meetings. And
yeah, just an easel with, you know, sheets of newsprint.
Yeah.
Works fine. Then you can tear each one off as you're through with it. Done that before. And the meetings that I have are pretty casual. You know, people speak up. It's not like they're being lectured to. You know, the idea is to interact with each other, and people help each other this way.
Yeah.
And so, you know, nobody is really lecturing or saying this is what you've got to think.
Yeah, that's what I like. That kind of open mindedness and kind of a light facilitation. Yeah, so I'm looking forward to doing this.
Oh, that's wonderful that you are. It should be a lot of fun.
I think what we'll do after we talk about labels, then ask some of these questions. For example, your first one, is this really me? And I can just perhaps pose it to a group and just allow silence for a couple of minutes. People immediately chattering and
take a couple of minutes there and have some quiet. Say, well, well, for the next 2 or 3 minutes, let's just think this over. And that could be very effective too. There are a lot of ways you can improve upon this and bring it home. And two, you know your group, you know your people,
Yeah.
you know you can personalize it even more.
When was the last time you had a workshop? I don't remember if you'd said
Oh,
something else.
it's been years, really. I am hoping to do this new one pretty soon as I can find a venue for it. Some people are willing to, even let you use their company uh, conference rooms,
Yeah.
things like that, or churches allow you to use one of their meeting rooms, that sort of thing. And as soon as I find something like that, I'll uh, try to gather a group of people off the street, invite them in, but uh, put together just a sort of a bunch of people who have, an interest in these things, but that I can sort of test it on, and because some might be longer than others, some meetings might take longer than others, so there might be a way to split them up a little differently, or change a few of the things that I put into it. That's that's always the way they work. You kind of have to see how what the effect is on different people and on a particular group.
Hmm. Um, are you finding that you have a lot that this is your next direction? Because you're a guy who has lots of different interests. I like to cover some of them too.
Oh,
Interesting. You have a lot of interest and you really pursue things, pretty deeply. So, are you seeing a different phase of your life coming where you're returning, going back to workshops? Maybe I don't know if you want to use the word teaching or not, but you know what I mean.
yes. Well, the workshops are always enjoyable. Uh, they're something that you get a lot of satisfaction out of, and have a lot of fun. You meet people, you make friends, you meet new people that way. That's always nice. But most of my pursuits are solo pursuits, things that I'm interested, whether it's my sculpting or before that I was doing a lot of radio controlled airplane flying and uh, you know particular little hobbies or things like that. But I will probably pursue sculpting more, even more seriously as it goes along, because it's so satisfying, and you get to bring other people in on it too, and meet people, when you're showing, and that sort. In fact, let's see, I met Chuck Hillig, who's a friend of yours, I
Yeah.
think, at the last show in Loveland, Colorado. He showed up there. He was visiting a relative, I guess, and I wasn't there at the time, and he came back around later, and I got to meet him. He's an author of quite a few books,
Yeah.
and has been very kind to me about my book, and it was just wonderful to meet him. So you never know, where these pursuits are going to take you.
That's interesting that Chuck showed up. Yeah, he's a great guy.
Yeah, he
That's
said he saw my name on the list of artists that were in the brochure.
oh. So did he go there to meet you then?
Well, he didn't go there to meet me. He went there with a friend he was visiting
Yeah.
Loveland, and just happened to see,
But he's
when they went in, they gave him a brochure, and happened to see my name on it. So it had nothing to do with me, when he went. So that was wonderful to have that chance to sit down and visit a bit with him. It's a little hot and crowded in there, so we couldn't really have a good conversation. And he had a relative with him too that was very interested. So, but that was a real surprise, and I just couldn't believe it.
oh, that's neat. Yeah, he's a cool guy. I think he's traveling now. He's all going all over Asia and Turkey and Greece and
Yes, yes. I saw
like
a note, an email or something that
yeah,
he was going to be gone for 8 or 9 weeks. Yeah, I should have offered to carry his bags for him.
yeah. Are you, doesn't sound like you're big on travel these days. Like you said earlier, your travel bug pretty much got satisfied in your younger.
Yeah, that's true. I like being there at a place. It's getting from here to there.
Yeah,
It's a big pain.
it is.
I don't know. Do you travel a lot?
Not a lot, not really. I mean, I might go to California once in a while.
I see. Yeah, that's a long way for you.
It is, yeah, it's shorter to go to Europe. I was in I
Oh,
was at the Science and Non-Duality Conference in Holland
oh,
a couple of
wonderful.
years ago, and I loved Europe there, but
Yeah.
not real big on travel. Have you ever thought of going to those conferences, Science and Non-Duality? Do you see that happening?
It's been suggested to me that I go and try to do something
Yeah,
at one of, have a workshop or something, but I haven't seriously looked at it yet to see what it would entail or, where the next one is. You might even know where the next one is.
well, next one's in a couple of weeks. It's towards the end of October.
Oh,
So yeah, if you wanted to pop up there and
like to do anything
San
there.
Jose and
Yeah, somebody told me that you can maybe arrange to do something before that, have a little group or a little talk or something before that, even though you're not
yeah,
invited to speak or anything.
yeah, you probably could arrange some kind of a meeting. I'm not sure, but they're fun to be. I mean, just imagine 500-600 people with your same interests. It's pretty interesting.
Yeah, yeah.
It'll either be interesting or drive you crazy, But I always enjoyed them. I'm not going this year, but I've been to every one, and I've always enjoyed it.
Yeah, I'll probably make my way to one here.
One of these days you should go. As far as when you get your workshops going, a good way to get people to find people is through a meetup.com.
Oh,
And that's how we have like 300 people in our group is here in Halifax, and uh,
so do they go by various interests?
yeah, you can use keywords and just create your own group. Use keywords in order to attract people who would be using those keywords to search for a group they like, and especially where you are, you'll get all kinds of people.
Oh, that's a terrific idea. Thanks for that. I had no idea there was such a thing going on.
Oh, it's great. Yeah, yeah. You just go to meetup.com and they charge a nominal fee for a 6-month period. It's a few dollars a month. Comes out to.
Hmm.
Um, it's really worth it. We've had our meetup group for, like I said, about 4 years now. It's
Yeah. Do people bring other people to
oh
this?
God, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Well, what happens is other people start some of their own groups, and then the groups feed each other.
Oh, that's
A
wonderful.
little community.
Hmm.
Uh, oh yeah,
So you can, once you get several of those going, then people can find the closest one to them and go to that one. That's a great idea.
yeah. You become part of whatever the network is out there, and yeah, in your area, in Denver, and or not Denver. Where you're in?
Yeah, that's right. Well, I'm in Lakewood, which is near Denver. It's a suburb of Denver, southwest of the city. But anything in the Denver metro area, you know, uh, would be a close enough place to have a meeting or a group.
So some people would know you through your name and your book, and some people would know the group through the keywords, and the way it's described. So yeah,
Probably.
be an interesting way to draw people. I recommend it.
Yeah,
Recommend looking into it.
they could always look it up on Amazon.com too, as far as the book and
Yeah,
uh, uh, interviews like yours that have really been blockbuster interviews. I mean, reviews.
well,
those kind of things are very encouraging.
Yeah. Well, that's good. That's good. You never know. One thing, you learn pretty early is that you never know what you're doing in a way. We don't know the
Yeah.
impact of it if there is any.
Hmm.
Don't really.
I used to always say I learned by fumbling around. And that's the way I do with most of the things. I try to research certain things, like when I built my pond, but so many of this, like even discovering what you are, there's a lot of fumbling around and going to different places and listening to different people and reading different books and talking and stuff. 90% of it really isn't much help, but then there are those jewels among all the other stuff. So, and that goes for me and anything else I do. I fumble around, and if you keep at it, you're bound to end up with something, and you're bound to learn something.
Well, getting back to self-realization, then, if someone asks you, if someone is seeking and searching and trying to break through to an understanding that there's only a reality or awareness, and they ask you, how do I get there? Are you likely to tell them to just bumble through it?
I keep fumbling around. I probably would do similar to what your first meditation is, your first reality meditation,
Okay.
or similar to that. I'd say, well, look for yourself. See if you can find a self there. That's what Terence Gray would probably recommend, and I'm sure with him on that. See if you can find one, and tell me, how it comes out and what you find. See if you come up with anything other than ideas and concepts. That's such a wonderful place to start.
So you make it personal then, as opposed to telling someone to follow a teacher or.
Oh, exactly. Yeah. Because you're your own teacher when you get down to it. Remember Terence Gray said that rationality can take you only so far, and he's referring to the intuitive research. Then you have to do the intuitive research. So you can't come to this understanding completely through logic. I mean, there's a lot of things you can see through logic and that sort of thing, but you've got to look in the opposite direction at one time or another to see what's going on. And he called that obnubilation. It's different from the dictionary definition, but he says it's the habit, the conditioned habit of constantly looking in the wrong direction. So, because we look to thoughts and ideas, something objective to what we are. We don't look upstream of that or inward towards our face or towards our eyes, where we find that clarity and emptiness right here where we are, and consciousness. We don't do that. We just, we've lived with consciousness all our lives, but we've never really looked at it. What the heck is it? What's going on here?
Yeah, well, first that word, obnubilation, was that it?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
You've used that. So some of your writing was somewhere on our website or somewhere where you actually used that word.
Yeah, I think I did use it in the book.
You're kind of playing with people, or was it in the book?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
There's no definition of it, but you give people a little challenge by putting a word like that out there. I don't know if it's in the dictionary or what, but.
Well, Terence Gray would use words I've never heard before, which was good for me, and that I didn't have a conditioned feeling for, what they meant, and I was more open. There was one time he had the sentence, "Life is basically oniric,"
Uh-huh.
and maybe you know what oniric means,
Well,
but I
you know, I do know what it means because back in around the middle 70s, I was experimenting with melatonin. Everyone knows what melatonin is now,
oh, uh-huh.
but back then no one knew what melatonin was. But I was studying the pineal gland, and I decided to take some. You know, it probably was crazy to do.
Mm-hmm.
I took what would be quite high doses, and
Mm.
one of the effects of it is that you experience what's called oniric episodes.
Oh,
Yeah,
uh-huh, uh-huh.
basically, as I recall, like vivid dreaming, vivid dreams.
Is that right?
Um,
That's amazing.
yeah,
I've
yeah.
taken
I
it in
read that.
small doses to help get to sleep, but I've never found that it helped a lot.
I've tried it, yeah. In the more modern times, I can't tell if it does anything or not. But yeah, I remember a lot of tranquility and some vivid dreams. I can still see them
Hmm.
35, 40 years later.
Oh, is that right? Well, now that's vivid.
Yeah, bright colors, vivid
The
characters.
problem with
And
Terence Gray was that he spelt the word wrong. We started looking for it in the dictionary, and I still to this day don't know exactly how to spell it. Maybe it's Oniric.
I think that's it, yeah.
Yeah, and he spelled it Oneric, and we were calling the public library and everything else to find out what that meant, and we still haven't told your listeners what it meant, so maybe we should not.
I don't know how Wei Wu Wei was talking about it, but my understanding is that an oniric episode is like a vivid dream. So I don't know.
Uh-huh, uh-huh. That's right. Just, dream life, dream a vivid dream. So life is basically oniric.
It's a vivid dream, very vivid,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
vivid dream.
That's what we find. We find that thread all the way back through history, different sages and masters telling us that, which seems preposterous to begin with, but as you study and see how dreams are created and how you often think in a dream maybe that you're awake, it begins to make more sense.
Hmm. And it's just how reality and objects and things, it's just how everything presents itself.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, that's a very good point. Yeah,
Yeah.
how things can seem objective, like objects in your dream, and yet they're not really. That's a very good way to understand non-dual, I think.
And I think a lot of things like, especially Douglas Harding's works, try to get you to see that, and they try to get you to see life as an oniric episode, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And but I mean, another way to experience to know that is to just have it be dropped on you by the universe, so to speak. Just have it happen, just by not doing any exercises at all. And that's something I wanted to ask you is there's the doing of different exercises and so on, and then there's a way of just living your life so that these understandings might just, unfold or show themselves.
Mm-hmm. Paying attention.
Paying attention or just living your life, and I mean, living your life with what? Just kind of an openness, I guess.
Uh-huh.
Open eyes, open mind.
Wondering. I know. I spent many years, wondering about these things and stuff that Terence Gray would write, and even to this day, there are certain things that I understood at one time, but there can be deeper meanings to, and you just kind of, like you say, very good just to stay open and keep the I don't know, the intuitive research going on, or the wondering.
That's what it is, yeah.
Uh-huh.
Intuitive research. Hey, you wrote an early book with that title in it, I think, as I recall.
What's that?
You wrote an early book with the title, with that term, intuitive research, in the title.
Oh no, but there was I had a correspondence program way back, I think
Yeah.
during the '60s, and it was called Whole Mind, and it was the Whole Mind Intuitive Research Program.
Oh, yeah.
I had thought of making it into a book, and I sent it to one editor who had uh, handled my first book when it was a purely Christian book, and he said it was too abstruse, so I didn't take it any further than that. So and it had different, uh, much the same. It had similar little exercises to go through and questions to ask yourself, because lecturing about this subject, I don't know, it doesn't seem to help us a whole lot. What we do is to actually get involved, in our own perceptions, and that way we could make the biggest progress and ask those questions that your mind doesn't want to ask. Even what am I? It seems like, well, we're fooled by the fact that, well, I know what I am. I just can't really express it or anything. So I don't need to look for that. And those are things that really fool you by thinking you already understand, you already know, and by going deeper and analyzing them a little bit better, because we have so many words to describe ourselves, our ego, or our self, we have, maybe help me here on some of these, our spirit, our soul, all of these things which we're fooled into thinking we understand what they are, but we don't know. And
Oh, yeah. We just get comfortable with something. That's all.
that's right. And
But
by
without knowledge.
labeling something, we really fool ourselves that we understand it because we can give it a label.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's what I was saying earlier. Even these spiritual labels
Hmm.
question. But I've been reading Wei Wu Wei in the last couple of days, so I'm a little confused about things I read, whether he wrote them or you wrote them. But one of you guys uh, wrote about, I think you were just mentioning it earlier, actually, about words, new words, the value of new words, that they kind of trick the mind, or they disrupt the mind, they invite the mind to
Hmm.
kind of open up.
Yeah, Terrence Gray wrote to me later on, one of his later letters, that Christians very seldom really come to an understanding of this, because their understanding is conditioned against uh, the awareness that we're talking about. But because there again, we think we already know what certain things mean, and it's our conditioning that keeps us from going further. And uh, because we have a certain, uh, maybe a particular group we're with, or denomination or something, that thinks that things are one way, this way, or anything else is wrong, or anything in any of the other religions is wrong, and it's so limiting, and that's once our conditioning. And so by hearing these different words from Terence Gray, using words I'd not known before, I'd have to look them up. In fact, I have one of these really huge Oxford dictionaries I had to buy just to keep up with the words he used in his book. In fact, it comes with a magnifying glass in it, so the book is huge and the print is very small, so that you can read, what the definitions are. So yeah, our conditioning, our mindset, is what I call it in the book, is like that big you know, curtain in Wizard of Oz that hides the guy who's actually pulling the cranks, the levers and things to hide what's really going on behind the scenes, because we think we know, we're conditioned to think we know and have all the answers.
Part of the
Didn't mean to ramble on there, but
no, I love it. Part of the curtain or the conditioning in any religion, of course, is ritual. And
mm-hmm. Yeah.
something
Yeah.
we like to do in our group meetings is to mix them up every time. It's never really the same, and that's it's like an intentional disruption. And I don't know if you ever thought of anything like that, but
Mm-hmm. Well, I like to giving away the beginning of the first group meeting. I like to jump up in front of the people there and start throwing Nerf balls at them.
yeah,
And that's very disruptive. And I said, well,
that's pretty cool.
what is this? What are these? And they'll say balls or Nerf balls or something like that. And I say, no, this is what they are, and I hit them again. And that gets a group going right away.
Ah,
Shakes things up and gets them wondering, what the hell have I got myself into? But things like that are kind of fun.
you ask what they are, they say, well, they're Nerf balls, and then you throw them and say, this is what they are.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, that immediate perceptions.
That's immediately requiring a shift in their mindset.
Yeah, yeah.
Or they're going to get up and leave, but
Yeah. Before he comes up with something harder like a baseball.
yeah.
And just get people wondering. How so many of the Zen things that don't seem to make sense, get you to wondering the old one. What's the sound of one hand clapping, or if a tree falls in a forest, those kind of things kind of bring up a question in your mind. Well, gee, I don't know. Let me think about that. And if they're wondering, well, what does he mean by that? That's good right there.
Yeah.
Could that have a different meaning in a different way? Yeah, and it's a lot of fun to hit people with Nerf balls too.
I think it's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Where do you buy Nerf balls at these days?
Oh, gee, I don't know. Probably at any sports store. I hope you can. I don't seem to have any around, but you can always make them out of foam, I suppose.
It's an important part of a non-dualist's toolkit, Nerf balls, I would think.
Yeah.
I always found...
What happens is some of them start picking them up and throwing them back at you.
Yeah. Yeah, then you can say, what's this Nerf ball?
Yeah.
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 That's fun. I always felt the word non-duality. I always liked to promote use of the word non-duality because it's different, and it had, at least now it's picking up some connotations, but for years it never did, and for the most part it still doesn't. But I always felt that one word was quite powerful just because it was new and had no real meaning.
That's a really good point, because it has no connection with anything that any religion or any science or anything that most people would be familiar with. So it would certainly trigger a question. Yeah.
And Wei Wu Wei. By the way, when you wrote him, did you write Dear Terrence, or did you write like Dear Wei? Hey Wei, what's happening?
No, it was Dear Terrence.
Okay.
And he always signed his letters Terrence. And I even wrote his wife, who he called her Natasha, his Russian princess.
Yeah.
She would write when she found out I had a young daughter who was 6 or 8 at that time, she would write letters to my daughter even, and they exchanged haiku poetry.
Oh, wow.
And that was pretty neat, I thought. Talked about their cat and, different things around. They lived up in the mountains above Monaco, and it was probably a kind of a wonderful place to be, inspiring, I would imagine. And so you can imagine how long it took to get letters back and forth, and none of this emailing stuff.
Have you
He wrote on these very thin, you've probably never seen them, but for many years there were these very thin paper envelopes that you could write a letter on and then fold it up and lick the tabs and mail it.
Yeah. Yeah, I remember those.
Do you? You're older than I thought.
Well, yeah, no, I'm 64, so
okay.
I never used those kind of. I never wrote a letter that way, but I seem to remember them.
Yeah, you've gotten them before. They might still have them, as far as I know. To save stamps, it was a very cheap way to write. And, Terrence always wrote with a typewriter, so he the only thing he wrote by hand, of course, was his name. And same way with Natasha. Natalie, I think, was her actual name. I'm not sure. Never called her by that.
He liked Natasha. He liked that Russian sound to it, or something.
I guess there are those affectionate names we have for people we care for. And I think that was just the way it was with them. She was younger, I believe. I wished I had been fortunate enough to visit up there. I'm sure I would have been welcome. But in those days, I was so poor, I was unable to. Well, it probably cost me too much to travel there now. But it was a sort of a dream, and I was hoping he might, travel to here where I was. I lived in the mountains in those times too, but he just said that they don't travel anymore. Now, he was in his 80s then, I think, late 70s, early 80s.
Have you ever, Galen, I can see you kind of writing haikus. Have you ever get into that at all?
No, I never did. It's really odd, and people look at me like something's really wrong with me when I say I really don't do well with poetry. I don't write it, and most of it I don't appreciate a whole lot. Now, I appreciate haikus and some things that are called Zenren Kushu, which maybe you know what that is, but I use some quotes of those in the book, never knowing really what they meant. In fact, I have a lot of these terms or things that I picked up maybe from Zen or these others that I really don't know exactly where they came from, what the roots of them are. But
yeah, I don't know. That's another kind of research, I guess.
Thumbing through my book, seeing if I could find one of those, but something about the geese not intending to make their reflection on the lake, and the lake, has no mind to receive it, or something like that.
Yeah. You have really cool quotes throughout the chapters, the beginnings or the ends, and
yeah, they're just things that were favorites of mine, wherever they seemed, like they might fit a little bit, keep people wondering, raise questions. That's what I like to do. I like to raise questions. And
yeah, that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Raise questions and then invite an open look, or if you're in a group, invite open discussion without any possibility of being right or wrong.
Yeah, there you go. There you go. And it's so much better than trying to tell people. I mean, you can't really, you know that probably better than I do. You can't really tell people what they are, and you can't tell them these things. They have to ask their own questions and come to their own answers because it's non-linear, intuitive way, something we know down deep, but really, hasn't been brought to the surface yet. I mean, we know what we are because what we are is what is, lighting all of this, projecting all of this that we see and hear and taste and touch and feel. So on some level, we already know all of this. It's just intuitively searching down through there with the right questions, of course, and being able to uncover some of this. And some of it doesn't pop up immediately because we're still looking in concepts and everything. So a lot of times, I know with myself, I'll have a feeling that something has meaning and is beginning to be opened and that sort of thing. And sure enough, it will be. It'll open up. And there the understanding is. And sometimes you feel that you always knew it somehow on some level.
Yeah, it's a great discovery. And
Yeah, haven't you had that experience that you were going to discover something, uh, and had eventually your attention? Maybe it's because it puts your attention on it. I don't know. Make some discovery.
not so much I don't know about that. I've had a lot of sense that larger stuff in my life was about to happen. I can kind of feel it dropping like a
Mm-hmm.
root on a tree. I can just feel it, and
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
it sort of drops. And
Too, yeah.
just with some of the stuff I've done, like with this non-duality work, I can just, sense how people feel about it, and
Oh,
see.
it's such a good thing you're doing here too, because I could just see this breaking wide open, once it reaches critical mass and it becoming something much more mainstream.
Yeah, it's kind of.
It's because people like you, are stirring things up in your different ways.
Yeah, I tend to have feel I think have a little vision. Like when I was interested in melatonin, I had a great sense that it was an amazing thing, an amazing chemical.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we create that in our own brain, don't we, as we
Mm.
drift off to sleep. Mm.
And so yeah, I thought
Certainly.
felt things with non-dual, like kind of like a vision for it. So, but anyway, I just but I think that's important, just to live being open, just this openness.
Did you coin that term? Is that how it's become popular? Because when I was doing my programs stuff way back when, that term wasn't really known or well known. I think maybe Terence Gray might have used it in a few places.
Yeah,
But I was just wondering the other day, well, is this something Jerry Katz has kind of brought to the forefront, a way to label? Because it cuts across religions,
yeah,
and it gets right to the heart, of all true religions, the mainstream. always, you'll find the mystic always ending up in that place right there.
Yeah, yeah. I don't know. I mean, I have the domain names for the nonduality.com and all, so I was kind of an early, proponent of using that word, and I would
Yeah.
actually explicitly suggest that people use the word because the word itself has
Yeah.
power. And I don't know how much, if it was coincidence or what, but before I started to use it a lot on the internet, really the word non-duality was pretty much locked up in academia and philosophical words and
Hmm.
used by someone like Wei Wu Wei. I've seen him use that, but rarely, or Alan Watts. Just
Hmm.
really seen, and it was just never out there for the people. It was kind of attached to departments of religious studies or ashrams, scriptures, but just for people to say, "Hey, that's non-dual," or just what
Hmm.
didn't exist.
Hmm.
Didn't exist. So,
Yeah.
so, so
And it isn't a scary term either. It's just a term that piques your curiosity, I think.
yeah, yeah. It was recently used in Sports Illustrated. They talked about a non-dual experience. One of the well-known baseball players these days has studied
Ah,
non-duality.
is that right?
That's a pretty
Yeah.
mainstream use of the term. Yeah,
Yeah.
that makes
And
sense.
they're right in the moment and really feel their every action and every movement is, they're right in it.
Yeah, in the athletic field now, in this particular player's case, Evan Gattis plays for Atlanta.
Mm.
He had questions about being and his existence, and he
Mm.
studied with some of the modern teachers, Jeannie Zandy, Muji, John Wheeler, and they were all mentioned in the Sports Illustrated. These
Oh
are
my
very,
God.
very niche non-duality players being mentioned in this ridiculously mainstream publication.
Wonderful, wonderful. Yeah. Yeah, that does your heart good.
Yeah, yeah, really interesting.
Hmm.
Um, I was wondering if people these days they still read Douglas Harding and of course Ramana and Nisargadatta and even Paul Reps, I guess, probably still selling books. And Wei Wu Wei is still, I mean, that word abstruse applies to him. That's the best word to apply to him. He's at times, not all his paragraphs or writings, but some of it is really hard to get. And I mean, I'm wondering if someone can do a book of selections and commentaries that would make his work as accessible as Douglas and
Oh, yeah.
Anna and all those people, because he was up there with them as far as being a realized guy. Um,
Yeah, it would be good for somebody to do an analysis of some of those maybe more important paragraphs or lines. I know at the time I was reading him, we had a group and we'd spend the whole evening on one paragraph trying to figure out what the heck it meant.
yeah,
And, that was a lot of fun, really. But it can be frustrating also, I suppose, if if you're the type that wants everything spelled out for them, you just won't make it in understanding what non-duality is. Nobody's going to be able to sit down with you and tell you. I don't know if I mentioned earlier. Yeah, I guess I did uh, that the logic and rationality can only take you so far in the non-dual, and you must then resort to the intuitive research and look in directions you haven't looked before.
hmm and I guess Wei's writing. I mean, when he starts getting into the presence of the absence of the absence, it's not the presence of the absence.
the presence
And
of
I probably
absence.
just said something brilliant there. I don't know what I said. But he would write like that, and
Yeah, he was. I
you
think
try to follow it with your head, and it falls apart. You can't really follow it.
he was. He must have had a lot of fun uh, doing that, because he would take things like that and follow them through and talk about, the positive and the negatives of film being, put together, and when you put the negative over the positive picture, it disappears. And, I don't know exactly what he was talking about in those terms, but it was kind of fun to try to follow him in those cases.
How
So,
many letters do you think you wrote back and forth to him?
I don't know because I lost some of them in a move, and 4 or 5 years ago I found a bunch that I had lost because I really thought I'd lost all of them at one point, and I've got some in a file, maybe 15 or 20. I'm not sure. It's I, Jerry, it's odd. I can't go back and read those again. Maybe I can now, but I couldn't at the time. There were, I don't know what there was about it, almost like Holy Scripture or something. I just couldn't go back and go over them again. Explain that to me. I have no idea why. In fact, I've never read. Hate to admit this. I've never read any of the present books on non-duality. I don't know anything about any of the other writers who are fairly well known at this point, and who were also teachers of others who are writing books now. I've never read any of them. It's always
Yeah.
everything has come from those early years with Terence and Douglas, and the writings that were there. What was it? Thomas Merton. He was an inspiration, and you mentioned Alan Watts. He was too, and those are very early writers who brought some of the Western thought to us.
Seems like maybe they were part of, I mean, in that time of the 60s, it was a time of tremendous creativity.
Yeah, and real upheaval too. There was a lot happening in areas. New things were being tried, and old things were, uh, being thrown away, and a lot of experimentation. So we were kind of open for that, I guess.
Yeah, and a lot of those people, they interfaced with that. Alan Watts was part of the San Francisco scene. And
Wouldn't it be fun to talk to him today? Yeah.
yeah,
Too bad you can't interview him.
I can try. I don't know how I would. I need a what do you call it?
Channel.
Seance.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, that would be fun. So yeah, there were so many people who helped me go from where I was, because I was a slow learner in those days. It took me quite a while to break through a lot of things. It wasn't always easy. It could have been, as I see now, so clearly that it doesn't take much. It's really pretty easy. It's just our conditioning that gets in the way of us seeing the things that we need to see. So most of my struggles really never needed to happen, but I guess they did. Otherwise, I never would have got to where I was. So I would encourage anybody out there not to give up if this all seems too mysterious or too different. That they should keep plowing ahead, and keep applying their attention to those areas that are a mystery to them.
Yeah, that intuitive research.
Mm-hmm.
And,
Yeah.
and these could be difficult days, and I think we mentioned this in the first interview, because there's so many people out there now. It can really be confusing.
Yes. Yeah. Really, it isn't. It isn't just different philosophies and religions, but I get the feeling there's a lot of people talking about the non-dual nowadays. Some of it I see doesn't resonate with me. I don't mean to use that word. In fact, I don't like it too well, but it doesn't seem to be useful to me. But then maybe it's just where I came from, and where I am. So it's hard to rule anything out in those terms.
Yeah.
Because I don't know about you. You read an awful lot, I'm sure, and you come in touch with a lot of people who talk about the non-dual and
Hmm.
everything, and you must yourself have different reactions to some of the things that are written and some of the things the people say as to how useful they are or how useful they would be. It kind of reminds me of probably how it was in the days of in Japan, where there were these Zen schools going on, and there were all these arguments about uh, what Zen was, and how do you reach Satori, and all of these other things going on. It must have been similar, though, without the internet. Of course, it wasn't quite as rough and tumble as it is today.
That's interesting. I've never really been that aware of that time. Like, what era would that have been? Was that? Uh, yeah, I'm not familiar with that
Oh yeah, yeah.
historical.
It was the so-called Southern school and the Northern school, and
Hmm.
uh, they had different approaches, and probably scorned the others at different times. Some of the same thing that probably goes on now.
Yeah, probably it sounds like it was a kind of a wild west of Zen.
Yeah, yeah, you're right.
Which is, if you have the right, if you don't get lost in it, if you can sort of enjoy it,
Hmm.
it's kind of fun, you know.
Oh, certainly.
It's like,
It's the most fun you can have, I think. Yeah, you might get people trying to prove to each other how much they know. That can get a little tiresome sometimes.
I think the idea is to enjoy it. I mean, that's what I find. I mean, I deal with this non-duality stuff every day for the last 15 years. I
Wonderful.
don't get caught up in it too much sometimes, but
Yeah, yeah. No, that's wonderful, and what you're doing is wonderful. Uh, this is, even to be some kind of, I mean this in a good way, some kind of glue to hold it all together and bring all these people together and distribute uh, what other people have to share. I think that's just terrific.
yeah, yeah, I guess I play a role. It's good. It's a good role.
Hmm. Yeah, it really is.
But full disclosure of non-duality would kind of threaten religions, and when you threaten religion, you threaten stability.
Same time that it threatens religion, at the same time, I think it would do the opposite and open the heart of it, the true belief to people.
Hmm.
You'll find, if you read some of the mystics, like St. John of the Cross and all of these things, the terrible things they went through to understand, well, they were seeing and understanding in a non-dual way. Meister Eckhart's, people like that. And uh, to me, it's the heart of the true religions.
It is, and that's beautiful. What you said, it opens the heart of religion, but to the masses, I mean, can you get Can you have a mega church?
Yeah.
Or, I don't know,
No, no.
you know,
I see this as an individual
yeah,
movement more so. I always am afraid of things that become too organized. uh,
yeah,
it turns into a political thing, and and that's what happened to the early church. People wanted to be bishops and form a hierarchy, and a head guy, and other people priests who people had to go through to, supposedly intercede uh, to get to God or to Jesus. I mean, that was all politics.
yeah.
So let's keep it out of non-duality.
The field of non-duality, I think, regulates itself. There's enough people saying, you're full of crap, or there's enough people that realize there's nothing, I guess, that they'll tell you. They're not
That's
afraid to
right.
tell you, and so it's hard to hold on, it's hard to hold on anywhere.
Yeah, yeah. And I imagine in beginning to look at these things and study these things, there's your whole conditioned thought processes rebel rebel against it, and so that kind of thins people out right at the beginning.
Yeah, it will, but there's still a lot of people, pursuing non-duality, like all the way.
Yes, yeah, and then it's absolutely wonderful. I never thought I would see such a thing, and
Yeah, yeah, you probably would hardly ever have imagined it. Yeah,
no, I really didn't. I thought just a few people. Well, in my own life, I've experienced, you know, not if not outright rejection, usually just disinterest. If I ever brought any of this up, most people just found no interest at all. So I just didn't unless I sensed there was something, in someone that had a possibility of an opening. I certainly wasn't an evangelist for the non-dual.
yeah,
The only time I really ventured out was, to have these workshops way back when, and then the book now. I had no idea how this book would be received, if it would at all.
yeah.
And I'm so delighted to find that, gee, there are people who are interested in what it has to say. It's just knocked me over.
Have you found in your life, especially back in days when this stuff wasn't so accessible, through the 60s, 70s, even the 80s, even the 90s, have you encountered people, kind of random people, who do connect with you right away, and who seem to be these kind of unknown sages?
Mm-mm.
Some people like that?
Not a lot, no. Very few. But it's funny how excuse me, it's funny how you'll knock yourself out then to help them out if you do find someone who has an interest or has some questions, that sort of thing. Whereas most of the time you don't even bring it up. And sometimes when you have the different people, it'll be used as a way to poke fun of you, even. So, this guy doesn't believe there is a self, so, and all of this stuff. So, you don't go around knocking on people's doors. And,
Oh, yeah, yeah.
and so, would you like to speak non-dual with me for a few minutes?
Yeah.
Uh,
Well, we went through reality meditation number one. I guess we're ready to move on to number two.
oh my goodness.
No. At this rate,
We're really moving right along, aren't we?